June 27, 2005. Deep within the Rocky Mountain terrain of the Kunar province in Afghanistan, a 4-man Navy SEAL team found themselves hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. Caught in the midst of a deadly ambush, surrounded by hundreds of insurgents closing in on their position, they made a split-second decision to leap off a cliff, choosing the treacherous descent over certain capture and death. After hours of intense fighting and extinguishing their ammunition, the team realized there was no escape. With their backs against the wall, they prepared for a final and desperate battle. This was a fight to the death. This is the story about Operation Red Wings.
2-3, 2-2, go ahead. Roger, hey, I got 2 unknowns moving along this berm that's over here to our right side. I can't see.
ولا دي نتسمي ولا.
Operation Red Wings was carried out in late June 2005 by the United States Navy SEALs in Afghanistan's Kunar province. It had a critical objective to locate and neutralize Ahmed Shah, a high-value target and prominent Taliban leader, also known as Ben Sharmak. Shah's leadership was directly linked to numerous attacks, resulting in civilian casualties and U.S. Marine fatalities. The mission aimed not only to mitigate immediate threats posed by Shah's insurgency, but also to significantly disrupt Taliban operations in the region. Shah's adept use of Kunar province's rugged terrain allowed his forces to execute ambushes and guerrilla tactics effectively, posing a persistent threat to the coalition forces and stability in the region. By targeting Shah, Operation Red Wings sought to disrupt the Taliban's command and structure, reducing their capacity to mount coordinated attacks. His capture or elimination was crucial not only for the immediate security gains, but also to undermine Taliban influences and bolster efforts to establish lasting stability in the Kunar province, a strategically vital area for U.S. military operations in Afghanistan. On June 27, 2005, a squad of elite Navy SEALs geared up with ammunition and supplies for an extended stay in the rugged mountains. Among them were Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, Petty Officer 2nd Class Danny Diaz, Petty Officer 2nd Class Matthew Alexson, and a hospital corpsman 2nd Class Marcus Luttrell. Their mission: reconnaissance and surveillance with the objective of locating and gathering intelligence on Ahmed Shah. Their task is to guide an assault team to either capture or eliminate Shah. Once this phase was successfully completed, a coalition of U.S. Marines and Afghan allies would sweep through the valleys, eradicating any remaining insurgents left in the area. Following the combat operations, Phase 3 would involve stabilizing the region and providing crucial aid for the local population. This included constructing schools, roads, and other essential infrastructure to support community development. Phase 4 would mark the beginning of their exfiltration process. If enemy activity persisted, the Marines would remain in the area to safeguard the local population, ensuring their safety and security. 4 Navy SEALs loaded in an MH-47 helicopter that would execute multiple decoy drops to confuse the enemy. Once on the ground, they navigated through the valley to a strategic overwatch position and suddenly encountered local goat herders. Confronted with a critical decision, the team detained the herders while they discussed their next move. With the mission at stake, the SEALs faced a pivotal decision. Releasing the herders risked compromising their mission and potentially alerting the Taliban, while executing them went against their rules of engagement. Lieutenant Murphy, after a team vote, chose to uphold the rules and release the locals. Knowing their cover was blown, they swiftly relocated to a defensible position to prepare for an enemy attack. True to their expectations, the herders alerted Shah's Taliban forces. Soon, over 50 Taliban fighters surrounded the SEALs, positioning themselves to ambush the team from all sides of the valley. Gunfire erupted from all directions as they wielded their M4 rifles, and were able to successfully repel the initial attack. However, the enemy's knowledge of the terrain and their overwhelming numbers soon posed a dire threat. Faced with the grim reality of needing to escape the mountain, the SEALs made a harrowing decision. They leaped off the mountainside to evade capture, or worse. Once on the ground, they regrouped, only to realize that Petty Officer Second Class Danny Dietz was still missing on the mountain. Without hesitation, they attempted to climb back up on the intent of retrieving him. Dietz, responsible for team communication, had been making a distress call when he was shot and killed by the Taliban. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Michael Murphy, despite struggling to get signal from the densely covered ground, climbed to an exposed cliff's edge to relay crucial information about the enemy's position and size back to the base, urgently requesting support for his team. In the midst of this act, Murphy was tragically shot in the back. Despite their fierce fight against the insurgents, while awaiting the quick reaction force, Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy would succumb to his wounds shortly after. Moments later, Marcus Luttrell would be separated from Matthew Alexson after being hit by a grenade blast. Back at base, two MH-47 helicopters, each carrying 8 U.S. Marines and 8 Night Stalkers, began to take off and prepare for a critical direct insursion. As they neared the insursion zone, the rear ramp of one of the helicopters lowered, ready to deploy the men. Suddenly, a rocket-propelled grenade bursted from the tree line, striking the helicopter, which resulted in the tragic loss of all 16 personnel on board. The devastating attack forced the second helicopter to abort its landing, the team inside filled with anguish and frustration, desperately wanting to be deployed and assist their fellow SEALs, but they were helplessly grounded, their mission forever altered by the heartbreaking loss of their comrades. Now separated, Marcus and Axelson found themselves on their own. Despite his injuries, Axelson made a final stand, extinguishing all his ammunition and ultimately leading him to use his sidearm, until he too would be killed by enemy fire. By this point, the team had eliminated 35 Taliban fighters. Luttrell, the lone survivor, continued to engage in the fight until he was thrown over a ridge by an RPG blast, rendering him unconscious. When he woke up, Marcus realized he was completely alone, with the enemy furiously hunting him down. Dehydrated and suffering from bullet wounds, shrapnel injuries, and a cracked vertebrae, he crawled for miles, driven by sheer will to survive. Despite his dire condition, he managed to evade the enemy for an entire day before stumbling upon a small village. There, a local named Muhammad Gulab took him in, abiding by an ancient code that required them to feed and shelter a wounded stranger and protect him from his enemies. For 5 days, Gulab sheltered Marcus, ultimately risking his own life and sending a messenger with a handwritten note to a nearby American base, informing them of Luttrell's status and whereabouts. A few days later, a team of Rangers would successfully extract Luttrell. Despite the harrowing journey and the profound losses, Marcus' survival highlighted the strength of the human spirit and the compassion that could be found even in the most unlikely places. Operation Red Wings marked one of the darkest days in Navy SEAL history and one of the most significant losses since Operation Enduring Freedom began. With 19 men tragically lost, in the days that followed, the military would launch Operation Red Wings 2 to recover the bodies of all the fallen servicemen, a somber and heart-wrenching mission to honor those who had made the ultimate sacrifice.